Good evening, everybody. It's great to be with all of you again. My name is Martin Uwa. I am the colorectal fellow at the University of Chicago currently, and it's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for today's great webinar. Before we get any further, I want to give a special shout out to our sponsor today, the Colorectal Surgical Associates of Nevada. We really appreciate all of their support in making this happen. It's just really invaluable the levels that they've gone above and beyond to help us with this webinar and just advancing the society. I think we're going to be in for a treat. This will be an informative talk for folks at all stages: medical students, residents, fellows, attendings in all levels of practice, early, mid-career, and beyond. Today, our esteemed panel includes three exceptional surgeons. First, we have Dr. New York, and Dr. Paul Johnson out of Memphis, Tennessee. So tonight, the challenge that we've given these three physicians is to guide us through our practices as new attendings in less than an hour as well. I know they're up for the challenge, so we'll get right into it. Remember, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please type it in the chat. We've allotted some time at the end to get to questions as time permits, but let's get right into it. So I think a good place to start is just going into the practice types. So we have academics, we have private, hospital employed, hybrid. What is your practice type and how did you get there? We'll start with Dr. Ofiku, if you don't mind.
Really a pleasure to be here today with you, and this is our second webinar. I am currently, I own and operate a private solo practice. However, I'm a faculty with the Sunrise GME Consortium General Surgery Residency Program. So I do work with general surgery residents as well, and I am assistant clinical professor of surgery at the Korean School of Medicine at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. But my main focus is being a private solo practitioner. I am informed, or I made that decision because of two important conditions: my experience through residency, as well as my passion and desire to help people. And I felt that the other hands were kind of getting in the way of that. So I wanted to steer my own ship and spend as much time as I want to with my patients and go above and beyond. And I felt that solo practice would be best fit for me.
Gotcha. That's great. That's great. We're gonna get. I know I have a lot of questions for you, so we're gonna get more into that a little bit later. Dr. Adeboyega, what about your practice?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. As said, I'm TT Adeboyega. I'm one of the colorectal surgeons that works for a huge health system in New York called Northwell Health. My practice is somewhat of a hybrid, what you could call academic, but situated in a community hospital. I happen to have being a colorectal only specialty. Within the Northwell Health System, there are multiple hospitals, and my group covers 4 of those hospitals. And I am the chief of colorectal surgery at one of the regional hospitals called Salcher University Hospital. It is a university hospital that still has a community feel. With that affiliation, we do have a medical school that is associated with Northwell Health. So I do have an associate professor of surgery position. We do have our surgery residency program. So we have general surgery residents in-house. And the benefit of it is to really have all the accolades and resources of a university hospital. But because I'm in one of the smaller hospitals within the health system, small being relative, I do still have a community feel or community practice feel with all the resources of a university center.
Great. And then last but not least, Dr. Paul Johnson, what kind of practice are you in?
Hi, again, my name is Paul Johnson. I am a hospital-employed colorectal surgeon in the Department of Surgical Oncology at Methodist Le Bonheur Healthcare and Methodist Cancer Institute. I am also a adjunct assistant professor at Meharry as well as Lincoln Memorial University. But one thing that's different is I had to create opportunities and those surgical clerkships. I had to actually bring that to me. It wasn't something that's there. So I don't have residents, and I previously, when I started, did not have medical students. But because teaching was important, that's something I made sure I brought in. Um, what I was looking for in hospital employment was making sure I could be loan free. So I was looking for a nonprofit hospital because I was doing public service loan forgiveness. So I'm proud to announce as of November, I am completely debt free. So I was lucky to never have to pay any student loans at the attending level. And so after 10 years, we're done. And so that was very important to me in choosing a hospital. Also, number two was chasing the bag. So one thing that I noticed in academics, it didn't pay as well. And so there was some of my colleagues who were getting numbers that began with two, and I was not open to that. And so with that, I said that I wanted to find something that was more equitable to what the amount of work that we put in. And so that was important in my search. And then lastly, I wanted no general surgery call. And it's one of the fewer programs or opportunities that didn't allow for any general surgery. So that was very important.
Nice. So we have the full swath of practices. So no general surgery for you, Dr. Johnson. None for you, Dr. Adeboyega. Dr. Ofikwe, you do any general surgery call?
Yes, I do some. I'm in private practice. I do, but it's highly limited. What I do are just ventral hernias. Maybe most of the time are incisional hernias. I do some appies, and occasionally I do gallbladders.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
that's about it. The rest of it, uh, colorectal cases.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And as I'm thinking about it, I know there are kind of those, how do you say, the mundane tips that you have for physicians that are young or newly going into practice. And there's often things that we miss. You know, Dr. Ofiku, you've had years of experience, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Could you think of, one piece of practical advice for those of us going into our first jobs? I'll give you a couple minutes to get your spiel out. But any practical advice?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going into practice, there are a number of things that I would want everybody to have in mind. Um, First of all, you have to realize that how much you get paid or the work or your remuneration is proportionate to your output. So if you are productive, yes, you can be offered a certain amount of money during negotiation and all that. But just realize that when you do go, you need to perform. You need to work as hard as you'd like to be compensated. If not, in a year or two, you're going to have a talk. It doesn't matter whether you're in private practice or you're in academia or you're in a hybrid. Just realize that what you put out is what you're going to be paid out of. And then you also have to realize that the person employing you also needs to make some income out of you in terms of some profit. And so you have to set the stage and make the balance between how much you want to work, how much you want to be remunerated. If you're as lucky as Johnson and you have no debt, you may decide to do less and then you know balance in other ways. But what I need to warn you about is this: in our society today, as you get out, just realize that there are people waiting to take advantage of you. Not everybody, but a lot. Either the hospital establishment is going to take advantage of you, or a trusted colleague or somebody who is also in the colorectal surgery realm employs you and sees you only as an object to make money. After you have gone through all your sacrifice and years and time and money, including loans, they make you work and also expose you to a lot of risk. So when you're making that choice of remuneration, also consider the risk, because if you join a practice that is very busy and they send you to six different hospitals, you're on call all the time, then you are going to make mistakes. And before you know it, you're going to get lawsuits, and then you're going to be put in a high risk pool. Now your insurance premium goes way high. Now you almost cannot afford that. And so when you're going to practice, you have to first of all let your be honest with yourself. What do you want? Are you going into medicine because of the money? Are you going into medicine because you want to help people? There is, or what is the reason why you're going to practice or you came to practice? Just remember, there's no wrong choice of or wrong reasoning for you becoming a surgeon or a colorectal surgeon. Just know why. Because if you went in for money, for instance, and you're practicing, you have to realize that when you get that money, then you would see your job as punishment. If they call you in on odd hours, you'll be angry at everybody. You'll be angry at the patient, the your colleagues, and subconsciously you would be rude to everybody, and you become that narcissistic personality on the block. On the other hand, if you know that that is why you went, it means you need to diversify into what you want and start investing in it. And investing in that such that you plan your exit the moment you start. And so once you make enough money, invest in what you want, you can now focus on that and retire early. If you went there to help people, you have to do the same thing. You're going to be going above and beyond to help people. You're not going to make money because you'll be carried away. So I do know that you will get a deep um, satisfaction that you're helping people, but you're not bringing enough money. You have kids, you have to pay other services and all. So you also have to make sure that you are looking for other source of income so that practice of colorectal surgery becomes a hobby to you while you have make your money somewhere else.
Mm.
And you just also need to know how to work with colleagues and realize that no matter how you do, there are areas that roadblocks in front of you. You
Mhm.
need to know how to avoid that. Hopefully, you'll be able to have time to talk about those things later on. Thank you.
Gotcha. Webinar over. You already did everything.
And then our topic for the next one is how to retire early.
There we go. There we go. No, thank you. Seriously, thank you for that, Dr. Ofiku. I'm literally writing down notes. I'm trying to be subtle, but this is going to be me in 6 months, so I really appreciate it. So to switch gears, I wanted to talk about this idea of imposter syndrome, where you've achieved this position of success, however you want to define success, but you struggle to believe that you deserve it or you're legitimate. Or in some ways, you almost feel like you're a fraud, and that you might be found out, that you really don't belong here. I want to direct this to Dr. Johnson first. When you have folks that deal with this, is there any points of advice that you have?
I think the key thing, and I've had multiple friends because I surround myself with people who look like me as well, who have suffered with imposter syndrome to no fault of their own. It's the way it's been set up, and it's about 30% of medical students and residents actually suffer from imposter syndrome, and it's higher, it's more prevalent in women and people of color. And the most important thing is to surround yourself with like-minded people and people who are your cheerleaders. If I'm your friend and I'm in the trenches with you, I'm going to tell you how great you are and that there's nothing that you can't do. It's important that each person who is suffering from this celebrates every success, because you're actually doing, remember, we are at a high place in our career, right? Where you've done enough and you belong here. You are enough. And so it's just making sure that you let go of that perfectionism and realize that you're not going to be perfect, but you belong here and you have done the work.
That's great. That's great. You are enough. I'm seeing t-shirts and sweater. We'll talk about this after the talk. Um, so in the same
Maybe
vein,
maybe you can retire early with that.
see,
There you go.
I'm
Merch.
thinking. I'm thinking already.
Right,
I'm thinking
merch.
already. So in the same vein, what about minority tax? This idea, to try to put it simply, that term that describes the extra responsibilities that are placed on you in your role as a minority faculty member in the name of efforts to, achieve diversity. The DEI committee, they automatically put put you up for chair and to serve on committees and to mentor people and mentor colleagues that are similarly diverse. We are we're a minority. We're one of the few racial and ethnic minorities that are oftentimes seen, and so we're called upon more than others sometimes. Dr. Adeboyego, any thoughts on how the minority tax kind of plays into your own practice and what you've experienced?
Absolutely. So I like to think of the minority task in two different categories. One of them is the one I think you're alluding to, where I get called, or I've been called upon to be on a variety of committees, many of which I didn't necessarily care for. And there was a period of time that I was called upon to be on several of them almost simultaneously. And in those situations, I think it's important to realize or to identify what the purpose behind my participation is, the purpose behind the request. And many a times it is to just fulfill a quota, or to, in a way, have a picture of a diverse committee. And in those cases, I think it's important to kind of clarify what I want and what purpose that participation is going to get for me. But there is another side of the minority tax that I think it's important to identify. And when we are called upon to pay it forward to others that look like us, to be mentors, to teach the students that look like us, to serve a lot of community service opportunities, going to the high schools. I think it's important to realize that, yes, it is extra work that we have to do, but the benefit and the blessing behind that is beyond the tax itself, you know? And to an extent, for a lot of us, somebody has paid that tax for us to be here. And so I'm mindful to separate the two, because the energy that I want to put in one category is very different from the energy I want to put in another. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that it exists. And if we're mindful of what it is, it's almost like being happy to pay a certain type of tax versus not being happy to pay another one. If I'm happy to pay taxes because I love the library system, but I don't care for, something else that my tax dollars are going to, I think it's kind of being mindful of both, and, celebrating the opportunities that we have, but also realizing that in cases that we're just being quote unquote used, be mindful of whether participation is really necessary and if it's worth my time.
That's great. That's great. That really resonates with me. Even as a fellow, I feel almost the pressure to say yes to everything, which I've heard Dr. Johnson almost talk about, this season of no. This whole this mindset that sometimes you have to enter to. Can you tell us about the season of no? I think this is another T-shirt idea, but the
It's
season of
absolutely a t-shirt idea. So it's about, so as you start feeding your own passions, other things will come your way, and you might want to say yes because you want to be a team player, and those things that Dr. Adebayega was talking about from the minority tax can be levied against you. So at some point, you have to start saying no, and once you learn how to say it, it feels pretty good. It's because for me, I was feeding my passion and getting these medical students on board, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of teaching. But then I'm asked to be on the peri-op steering committee, Epic super user, COC, physician liaison, and they start to now they got Deloitte consulting. Like, it starts to add on. And so at the point where you say, okay, I'm no longer feeding my passion, I'm not getting compensation for all these other things, I need to learn how to say no to protect me, my space, and my mental health. Say
got it.
no. Put that on a shirt. Oh no, they probably already have that on a shirt.
That's true. That's true. No.
Just say no.
There we go. There we go. I like it. I like it. That sounds familiar, but we're gonna roll with it. So the next thing I really wanted to touch on today, if y'all wouldn't mind, is microaggressions. So, for the audience, I kind of think of microaggressions as those everyday, thinly veiled instances of racism, homophobia, sexism, other biases that come across as these innocuous gestures, comments, or insults. I think we've all experienced it in some way or another. where you just think that 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 kind of went weird. That felt a little strange. Obviously, work should be done to address the big structural issues of racism, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's also important to confront and talk about the small things too. Dr. Ofiku, I wanted to ask you specifically, how has microaggressions and/or racism affected your career?
Okay, I really don't want to discuss this topic in a vacuum. I Before going into this topic, I just have to let everybody know that, I mean, what a great opportunity we have in the United States. There's actually no country on earth where my story will be possible except in the United States. So just to give you a background, I did my surgery training in Nigeria, and then I moved over to the United States and started from scratch. And at the peak of my career, there's almost nowhere it's possible in on Earth. So I just want to put that out there. However, there are a few there are a few people in the society, a proportion, minority proportion, I would like to say, who may not want you to progress the way you should, or do not think that you deserve that progression or the status that you're aspiring to. And it usually starts very early. It may start in college while people are trying to get into med school. Maybe the counselor tells you, "Oh, that's way above you," and just discourage you. You go to medical school and trying to choose the profession. But I'll just fast forward back. We're all colorectal surgeons, so we've gone through that, and I'll share some of the things that maybe is common to us that we would relate to. You've gone through all these hopes, and now you are a surgery resident. There are certain things that will stand in your way into successfully becoming a surgeon. Like you got this initially, you prevented from getting it, but you get into it, and then there are certain forces that are actually working very hard to get you out. I mean, I can tell you right now from my personal experience as a general surgery resident during my surgical oncology rotations in one of the prestigious oncology centers in New York. Um, a fellow who was above me almost got me fired. I was completed this rotation. I was very happy. I was done with it, and then I got a letter of the laundry of things that I did wrong and or did not do, to my surprise, from the chief of surgery. I was called before that committee was getting ready to be fired.
Mm,
It's hearsay. I mean, he say, she say. The only thing that saved me from being fired was text messages between I and this fellow, and in which she was texting all the things she accused me of doing. She was texting me while she was coming late around, and all that. So it was projected all back to me. Text messages are what saved me that I'm a surgeon speaking to you today. If not, I would not be here. And the next person coming after who came after me got kicked out.
Oh,
So
wow.
going into practice, you have to learn how to document things, memorize things. If you have a conversation with somebody, yeah, write it down either in the chart or in a text message, right? Like just so it's there. That is one. And then you survive that, you become a surgeon and say, "Whoa, I'm done. I'm now a surgeon. Nobody can touch me." And then you all of a sudden you have a problem with peer review. Uh, you you have to be appearing peer review. You don't know it's anonymous, so you don't know who is sending it. So it may be a nurse, it may be anybody can just send your name. I'll give you an example. Here in one of the hospitals, you almost predictably every so often, every 2 3 months, I will go for peer review, and only for them to say, "Hey, you provided excellent care." It kept going until I had to let the administration know that, hey, I feel like I'm being targeted. If everybody was appearing before peer review, you wouldn't have the schedule to take care of people.
mm,
Yes, I already had a letter from them for to appear before a peer review committee. I got another letter saying, "Oh, we have reviewed it. You don't have to appear," and that was the end of peer review. So In trying to summarize, you have as a colorectal surgeon who is just starting, realize that people are there out there who are trying to create a paper trail on you. It's not everybody, maybe just one or two persons, but all that is required is people creating a paper trail. And before you know it, they create that paper trail and they build a character which is completely different from you. And when it's time to fire you or to do something, they bring that and they build that. And they have that's hard evidence. So do not ignore any letter that you receive. In peer review, they tell you you don't have to respond. But no, they're building a paper trail. And just realize any medical person, administration or administrator who takes their pen, they can destroy your career. They
Mm.
just to write something derogatory against you, and you are in the national data bank. Nobody's going to employ you. Nobody's going to give you license to practice in their state, and that really brings you down. So you have to be aware. If you're not, then it gives you some real puts you in trouble. So
Wow, that's good to know because I that is truthfully that's not part of the resident curriculum. Like we don't really I know me specifically, I never learned about that. Peer review. This is the first time I'm even hearing about that. So I appreciate that again, Dr. Ofiku. To kind of stay almost in the same vein, we've heard the horror story WhatsApp group about experiences of all of us, but particularly our the women of our group. Small plug on the side, join SBCRS, and you get even more access into the community. You get to be a part of the WhatsApp group where you can literally have access to not only Dr. Ofiku, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Adeboyega, but the whole kind of community of Black surgeons, Black colorectal surgeons. Plug over, but I will plug again. But we've heard, the stories of, the experience of women in particular as in the role of surgeons. Dr. Adeboyega, I hate to make you the spokeswoman for everybody, but can you tell us a little bit about your experience and kind of how you've navigated that?
Yes, and I don't know that I can speak for all women, but I can share on my experience. And just wanted to highlight one of the things Dr. Ofiko said. He said it only takes one or two people. And dare I say, it only takes one, which is somewhat of a scary thing to think that one person can, in a way, destroy years and years of hard work. But it's an important thing to be mindful of and to really if you're mindful, maybe be prepared and to fight, if deemed necessary. As a woman, I'm going to touch on a few areas. One of the big things, especially in the operating room, is the nurses, and I I do find that the nurses who are typically women tend to have a preferential treatment for male surgeons compared to female surgeons. And this is something that's very difficult to work with sometimes, because you really wonder why somebody who should at least be able to resonate with you as a woman can be somewhat counterproductive and not helpful when you're trying to advance things. One of the things I noticed is in terms of how quickly they would move cases along, how quickly they would turn over the room,
Mm.
or even their level of remorse when something is not properly planned, especially when it's something that's been done time and time again, and they should be very well prepared for. The way I've navigated this is really to turn the focus away from me and make it all about the patient. And so when I'm talking about how quickly we should turn over the room, or the fact that equipment yet again is not available, even if it's something that has been done several times, I really try and make it about the patient. And that helps me bring the entire team of mostly women, but the entire team, regardless, on board with me to rectify the problem. If I feel like a patient is waiting too long, the turnover is too long, I really just join in and try and move the patient along. If I need to bring the patient into the room, if I need to actually clean up the room, like try and get the instruments and things out of the way after one case is done, just to help the team out. And I think that's been well received. It's unfortunate that I feel like as a woman I have to do this, but once I change that focus, it's been well received, and I do see a change in how the team is more efficient in getting things done. The other aspect of things is even patience. I think very, very often we think of just, what other people in administration are doing, but it's very common to walk into a room with a team of residents and medical students, and for the patient themselves to almost turn their attention to somebody else, a male member of the team, not acknowledging me as the surgeon or acknowledging my authority in the team and in their care. And sometimes I deal with it by just really addressing the patient directly and reminding them who makes the decision. I'm very I try to speak to my patients in a very kind of friendly way so that they understand things in layman's terms. But very often I would say, okay, so well, I will determine when you're ready to go, or I will determine, if your diet needs to be moved on, or I'm making the decision, to back you down. I think sometimes just dropping those comments ever so slightly is a way of resetting the mode, resetting the thermostat for people to remember who is making the decision. And the last thing I want to touch on is, although there are many a times that women, I as a woman feel like I may be sidelined by administration or even my fellow colleagues, my fellow surgeons, I always want to highlight the fact that it's important for us to also seek out the people that can be our advocates, because instead of just harping on those that are sidelining us, that are oppressing us, if you pick one or two people that can be your advocate, it could springboard you even beyond the people that are trying to oppress you. And that has been very true for me. I would say that the people that have gotten me to where I am, even my position and giving me the chief of colorectal surgery in the hospital that I'm at, there were men. And I think it's important to take those relationships and those affiliations and maximize them, to overcome whatever microaggressions or any slights that people have against us as women.
I have a question. So, Dr. Adebayega, have you noticed that men, especially men of color, black men, have they really stood in the gap for you at these times where you faced adversity?
Mm,
Well, I would say that in my experience, I haven't had too many male physician leaders in my career. More recently, I've had one in one of the hospitals, and one of the things that I noticed and I worry about sometimes is that the the role, they're too worried about the role than supporting other minority physicians. And I to an extent understand that, all of us, regardless of what role we're in, because we are rare in our role, we almost try to live up to whatever standard has been set before us. And a lot of those standards are not set by other minority leaders. And so you come into a position where you feel like, yes, I have to go through the motions with these rules, regardless of if they make sense or not. And one of my first experiences and interactions with this leader was regarding a patient situation where I was reported by a nurse, and it was a patient that was unfortunately quite belligerent. It was an IBD patient, and had a substance use disorder, and unfortunately just kept coming back and demanding pain medication. And it was quite obvious that's what it was, that it wasn't necessarily new pathology. And I happened to be rounding that day, and he made a comment that was very, it was almost threatening to or demanding pain medication. And in that comment said that he would call his mother if I didn't adhere to his request. And I just found it absolutely hilarious. There was nothing else to respond. One, you can't make me do something that I don't want to do and I don't think is clinically necessary. So I really just laughed out loud, and I laughed out loud in his face. And that made him even more annoyed. And the nurses that were taking care of him thought that his increased annoyance probably made their job more difficult, and they reported me for laughing. And there was a whole meeting with the leader and actually like the CMO of the hospital. I thought it was completely trivial. There's no patient care, like problem. It was just about a patient who was clearly and documented to be difficult, and a nurse reporting me. And I felt in that role, this particular physician just felt like he had to go through the motions. Um, and so while I sympathize, I do think there are times where people are just going through the motions in that leadership role, and in order to help us out, male or female, going through the motions is not always helpful, because in that case there was nothing necessary. This was not even a peer review. There was no surgery performed, and it was quite. Felt like it was an unnecessary waste of my 30 minutes of a meeting.
Dr. John, I think that's a great kind of point to ask, because that experience is really not unique. So, what Dr. Adebayoga is saying, that's not unique. So I think there is a bit of a challenge that we have to, give to our brothers, our brothers in the colorectal community and, surgical community abroad to, stand up for not only what's right, but stand up for the folks that are in the rooms with us. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes you go up to the top and then you don't look back, or you
Mhm.
don't look to the right, to the
Around.
left, and there's other people there with you. And those folks may be your allies later on. So there's a challenge there to be an appropriate ally, I think. Um, the next thing I wanted to talk about, I'm just writing all these notes down, so I appreciate y'all bearing with me. But the next thing I really wanted to talk about was mentorship, because, every time I ask my attendings and people that are above me, what are the keys to, really succeeding as a new attending, they all talk about mentorship, but almost in this vague way. My question is, one, is mentorship really as important as everyone says? And then two, how has it shaped who you are? How has it shaped your career? And is it something that you actively tap into? I'm going to direct this to Dr. Johnson.
I think the vague way is because mentorship is different to everybody. I and that's the thing. So it's mentorship to one person might just be a a I a call, knowing that you're there and I can call you,
Mhm.
and to another person it's weekly check-ins. So it's all about the needs of the mentee, but the ultimate goal is growth and
Mhm.
development. So, and whether that be personal growth, whether it be professional growth, both are very important. But for surgeons, it's very important, especially in the setting of this, where we're talking about navigating as a new attending. The most
Mhm.
important thing coming out as a new attending is to make sure that you're using great decision making. Like Dr. Ofiku said, getting starting out, people will be really quick to pick up that pen and write negative things about you. So you don't want to put yourself in any position that anybody can say anything negative about you and start to build a reputation. So
Mhm.
it's important that if you need to pick up that phone and call an attending mentor to say, I'm dealing with this tough case, what would you do? How would you take care of this? Should I be doing what I'm doing? That's
Mhm.
actually more important than the technical aspects.
Mm,
Technical aspects you've learned, you've mastered, hopefully, already going as a new attending.
Mhm.
But it's that decision making that's going to be very integral. And I'm not ashamed to have said, hey, I called Dr. Monson, who was one of my mentors, on a couple of occasions, Dr. Orkin, when I'm seeing things that I haven't seen in training,
Mhm.
or need a that phone a friend moment, just to reinforce. A lot of times
Mhm.
it's, I know what I'm gonna do. Did I do the right thing? And
Mhm.
that person just saying, yeah, you're good. That it's really invaluable. So those kind of things are, as a new attendee, you want to make sure you have those relationships already cemented before you venture out on your own.
Yeah.
great, great. Okay, perfect. All right, mentorship means, okay, beautiful.
Oh, here you can plug the group chat again.
See, that's exactly what I'm about to do. Because so, for those of y'all that are not aware, if you're a part of SBCRS, I've been hyping up this WhatsApp group,
Mhm.
but you literally have at your fingertips
Mhm.
access to nationwide mentors.
Mhm.
Somebody out there is on call and somebody out there is awake. So
Mhm.
literally, if you were in the OR, I'd bet you could drop a question in WhatsApp and you can get pretty quick recommendations about what they think in terms of intraoperative decisions. Not to speak of walking through a patient who has cancer and trying to make sure you're doing what's right for the patient. So
Mhm.
it's a great resource. If there was even, if that was the only thing that you got from SBCRS, it would be well worth it. And there's so
Mhm.
much more. So I definitely have to plug it again. The WhatsApp group is fantastic. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna expose myself as a proud millennial here. Okay, so bear with me. But can we talk about balance? Because is it possible to have balance? What is balance to a surgeon, to a colorectal surgeon? What does it look
Mhm.
like to you in your practice? Is there seasons where you're a little bit less balanced and more balanced? I have to pose this one to all of you because I definitely want to know. I'm going to start with Dr. Ofiku though, because I see him smiling over there looking at me about balance. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so like you said, balance means different things to different people. For me, I believe that balance should be divided into chronic balance and immediate daily balance of life. What I mean by chronic balance is, okay, you're getting out, you are going to residency, you see the task ahead of you, or you're going to be very busy. The training years you're going to do, and even when you get out, you're going to be extremely busy. And
Mhm.
so I see balance as combining the different aspects of your life, your family life, your career uh, life, and your professional life. Um, I feel like if you grow in all the aspects of your life, the different aspects of your life together and excel in all of them in a balanced manner, you will be very happy and you would really have a good um, sense of reward. So, for instance, in my experience, my wife is a doctor as well. Before we started residency, we talked about it and said, okay, this is a talented venture. What are we going to do? We moved over to the United States, we had a child, and we said, okay, we decided to complete our family before residency. And we also decided, okay, we stagger it. Somebody go first and the other will follow. So I started the residency. We completed our family, and then she followed. But then there's the struggle of having to take care of kids while you're in
Mhm.
residency. And so, her parents came on board, helped us with that, made that decision. And then, she came in, and while she was in residency, I had to move the kids to me. At that time, I'm already in practice. Now I have to go with my kids. Literally, sometimes I would be, playing with them as they grow up. Let's say playing basketball, and I get a call. We pause, or I go to the hospital with them, have them in the residency room because at that time they were bigger. Go do see a patient, come back. We go back to play. The deal is that okay, we're together. So the experience of your spouse, your family members counts a lot because you're going to be very busy. So as you're busy, if they are involved in your busy schedule and they feel you, then they're not going to miss you so much. I have other colleagues, for instance, who are surgeons who are as busy as I am, but their kids never see them at all because they're always there. So that's one form of balance. And then at the same time, you're trying to grow. You need to either write a paper or something. So you do that. But it becomes a bit tough. On the flip side, if you keep one end uh, on pause, I want to finish all my training before a professor and do anything before I get a spouse, then you have excelled on one aspect of your life, but the other aspect you haven't. And if there's a big gap between them, then there's a big disbalance, especially if you still have to work. So that's one form of balance. That's what I say, chronic balance. But on a day-to-day level, sometimes I have to be in the clinic, then I have to do surgery, then I have to round all on the same day. That is really horrible, in terms of grinding. So it may not be possible for me to be at home. I've had people help me pick my kids from school, including my staff volunteering because of the way things go. So creating that balance, I believe, is how you work. And put things together such that you blend everything. And the way this career is, it is not possible to say, I work from 9 to 5, and once it's 9 o'clock,
Mhm.
5 o'clock, I'm done.
Yeah.
When you come out of training, your patients don't have shift. They have a problem that they want to fix. It doesn't matter the time of day, they just know you. And once they have that problem, they want you to come fix it. So it's not a 9 to 5 job. You have to find a way such that no aspect of your life suffers. And that's the way I look at balance.
Gotcha. Great. So let me get one thing clear before I go to Dr. Johnson. Is there not duty hours as an attending? I'm
Well,
just, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So, Dr. Johnson, what's your thoughts on balance? I know you have a t-shirt, another t-shirt slogan for me.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of time, I'll keep it really short.
Yeah.
But for me, balance is gonna be net happiness, right? So after you weigh everything out, are you happy? And is that the net, the sum total, right? So as Dr. Ofiku said, that acute phase might be terrible. So you might have you had a beautiful elective week scheduled,
Mhm.
and then you get consulted up the wazoo, multiple operations you had to add on, and that week didn't look so great. But you have to be able to say, okay, next week, because I did it this week, I need to give me more time.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do as much. Maybe I won't take that extra call shift, or I will shift things around. Maybe it's time for a vacation.
Mhm.
Maybe I need, so all that thing in order to make yourself and prioritizing your mental health, to make sure that at the end of the day you're happy in what you're doing. Because like Dr. Ofiku said, if you're not happy doing what you're going to do, it's going to come out as anger and resentment, and then it's going to translate to your colleagues,
Mm.
your patients, and also the people who you work with.
Okay. I see. I see. That's great. Dr. Adeboyega, what are your thoughts on balance?
I really like the comment about net happiness, and that's something that I will definitely take away. But my opinion about work-life balance is that it's really a process. I don't think it's a destination. I think it's a journey, and it's something um, that we have to do really every day for the rest of our lives. Even when we're not working, I guess we have to still balance whatever else is on our plates. And the things that I think about is really prioritizing what is important and taking time to make that assessment, because what is important this week could be actually very different from what is important next week. If I have a very busy day or busy week, for instance, and I don't feel like I've spent a lot of time with family, or I haven't spent a lot of time on myself, no self care, I haven't exercised, I've been eating very poorly, the next week, even if I'm still busy or my schedule isn't lax, I would probably prioritize something that affects my family or has to do with self-care more.
Mm.
And I think work-life balance is just being conscious of that decision, and every day assessing what is a priority, knowing that all those things are important. And as you prioritize, you're going to make sacrifices, but that what is important today is important today, and tomorrow the other thing can be done. And I think it's just a journey, and doing it that way on a daily, at least weekly basis.
Right. Wow. That's great advice. Wow. Y'all have. I'm looking at the clock here. Y'all have packed so much in literally less than an hour. I never doubted you for a moment, but I'm still a little impressed. I do want to leave some space for just to, in the interest of just respecting everyone's time. I do want to leave some space for some more questions from the audience, but I did want to touch on expectations. So, you know, managing expectations, and I think there's different expectations from the patient, from yourself as an attending, starting off from your staff. What was the hardest thing, you know, in terms of managing expectations, and how did you get through that? I want to give this one to Dr. Adeboyega too.
Well, in terms of expectations, I can speak from my experience. One of the things that was really difficult for me when I came was just understanding the way the practice was where I trained for medical school and residency. Everybody was somewhat hospital employed, and so the grind of getting patients and referrals wasn't really a thing. And moving here was something that I really had to work on. And that was a change in really what I knew. And so I think it's important, regardless of what practice you go into. If you're going to solo practice, if you're going to be academic or employed, I think it's important to understand the climate in which you're going into and what will be expected of you, and how that may be different from what you're used to. And that really helps you in that transition from going from training into being in practice and being in attending. The other thing I want to highlight is that unless you're going to a practice that is very well established, or a practice that has been seeking a colorectal surgeon for a very, very long time and has a huge backlog, chances are you're not going to be as busy as you were when you were a fellow. You're operating with multiple attendings as a fellow. So if you're doing 3 LARs and 2 rights and, 4 sigmoids in a week, that's because you're doing the case volume of 3 or 4 attendings. That is just
Mm.
not a reality. And the grind of office hours and CT reports and the mundane things of medicine become a reality. And it's just important to remember that, because that can be very a wake up call, and you realize this is not what I signed up for. I was supposed to be doing all these cases. And so I think just reminding yourself of that, and giving yourself some grace, especially at the beginning stages of your career, is important.
Okay, great, great. I think one of the questions that's always coming through, and it kind of relates to what you said, so I want to pose this to all of you all, is circling back to what we first started talking about, which was your practice type. So, private, hybrid, hospital employed. What are, I guess, if I could go down the line and ask you one pro and one con about your particular practice type, what would you say? We can start with Dr. Ofikwu, and then we'll go around.
Okay, so I'm in solo practice, and I wanted to be in control and be able to determine my future, what happens. As you can see, based on what I told you, that was determined by my experience and my passion. I wanted to get once into I went into surgery as a means to an end, because I really wanted to help people, and I felt that was a way to get me to helping those people. And I get a lot of gratification from doing that. And so coming out of fellowship, I joined a 9 surgeon group, and I realized that, okay, as I spend time taking care of patients the way I want to do it, they tell me, hey, you need to move on, because one, you're not making as much money if you're doing that, going the extra mile, and you need to, move it along. And I also realized that, you know, it started bringing some tension. And then, like I also told you, my experience in fellowship crystallized it in my head that I was not comfortable giving anybody the opportunity to be able to write whatever they want over me that would affect my future. And
Hmm.
so I decided these are the two things that made me decide to go into solo practice. So the advantage I have as a solo practitioner is that I get to set the tone on how things go, how much time I get to spend with the patients, how if I need to go to a funeral, for instance, I would go. How I want to go over and beyond help any patient, I can do that without any repercussion. I only know that that may affect my remuneration and all that, but I get compensated on the other hand. So that is the main thing. But then I also know that I get to be a faculty, even as a private practitioner, and also be elected to be an assistant clinical professor.
Hmm.
So I just felt like I could be in private practice and still participate in teaching residents and also teaching medical students.
Gotcha.
And so I felt this all around and gives me that opportunity to be in charge as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And Dr. Johnson, you would describe your practice as hospital employed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so what about you? A pro and a con.
A pro would be no residents. So I know, but especially starting out as a new attending, you want to get your sea legs, right? So a part of not having um, residents is not that fear of someone else avulsing the IMA,
Ah,
that you get those things
I
that
understand.
were are present in training, and someone was worried about you doing it. Now I don't have to worry about that, and I get to build that confidence such that if there was a point where I um, want to pivot back into academia, I can always do that feeling confident in my operative skills because I've done it. I've done it and over and over on my own without having to teach through it.
Hmm.
Um, a con, no residents. So right, so there's the help that residents do bring. They're invaluable. They're the first line of defense. They catch things before you can catch them. I'm the type A person who's chart checking from their phone, so I can't delegate that to anybody else. It's me, and I am the first and last line of defense. So that's a con in and of itself. So there's pros and cons to it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And Dr. Adebayega, what about you?
Yeah, so I really wanted something that was going to mimic my training. So
Hmm.
it was kind of paramount for me to still be in somewhat of a university setting where there's teaching. I wanted to feel close to the nuances of things and just know what's going on and what's new. So that was important for me. And I like the stability of a salary, to be honest. And we didn't talk about payment models. And so um, there is still an incentive to produce. But I knew from the get go that I wanted a job where, this is going to be my salary. And if I do more, I'll be compensated. But this is what I'm going to get. And I like that.
I see. I see. Another question that came in. We're just gonna go rapid fire. So, um, are there, in your first year of practice, are there cases that you would say, hey, maybe you should avoid, maybe call in a senior colleague to do this case, or maybe I should wait a little bit, get a couple cases or get some cases 6 months under me before I draw the ire of whoever it is sending you to peer review. Are there any cases like that that I should be thinking, or that I'm not asking for me, that we should be thinking about?
I'll take. So I think there are many cases that you probably shouldn't be doing if you aren't comfortable. For example, pouches, right? So a lot of if you only there was a five minimum in training.
Hmm.
If you weren't comfortable with pouches or how the complications of pouches, you're not high volume in that setting, and you don't have a mentor who can just be there or just
Mhm.
if not to say they're doing the case, you're doing it, you're doing everything, and I don't think there's a case you should necessarily give away if you have the proper resources and network and mentorship to get through the case, because you don't want to you're gonna have to build to that level anyway. The key
Mhm.
is making sure that you're prepared. It's perfect preparation leads to a perfect procedure. That's what I was taught in training. So that's tantamount. So you have to make sure that you're prepared for the case. You've read, you know the relevant anatomy, and you're ready to go. And how you would pivot. Am I gonna do an ostomy, etc. But also, who's gonna have my back if things don't go according to plan? And so
Mhm.
that's just again that first year is about decision making. So if you know that you're going to have a challenging case, make sure that senior partner has that day off. They're not in the OR too, and they're ready to assist you from start to
Mhm.
finish. And have that person who can come in. I was doing a difficult case, and he's a surgical oncologist, but I was just like, come in and look at this. He didn't do a thing. He just literally stood. I was at the robot. He just stood at the robot, and every now and then he'd be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's just that yeah, yeah, yeah that gave you the
Mhm.
confidence to know you're still doing the right thing. You're not getting into any trouble, and the difficulty that you're seeing, I see it too, and I'm here for you if things end up going awry. And so
Mhm.
having that is very important. If you don't have it, that's when you need to decide to
Mm.
send things away, right? And so my hierarchy here in Memphis in terms of if I had to do a local anal, I don't have I have surgeon support, but in terms of like low things, I'm not sure that I would be super comfortable doing my own coloanos. So unless I can get my colleague who I trained with to come over and help me out with that, those kind of things I've like, maybe it's better to send it away. Maybe it's better because it's ultimately not about you, right? It's about
It's
that
about the
patient.
patient.
Right.
If you
Right.
can't give that patient the best outcome, it's not about your ego. It's about they have to live with that complication. So it's better to send them to somebody else who can get it done properly than for you to try and stroke your ego and what you
Mhm.
can or cannot do.
That's good. That's good. I see we've hit an hour, and I want to respect you all's time. I really want to respect you all's time. But see, and this is the third plug, and that's what the WhatsApp group is. I can keep on asking y'all questions in the WhatsApp. Um, but before we end officially, I do want to give another shout out to the Colorectal Surgical Associates of Nevada. And I didn't mention, I mean, that's Dr. Ofiku's group. He's kind of quietly over there, but they were the folks that really helped put this together. And so to Dr. Ofiku and to the Surgical Associates of Nevada, we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I think this has been a great talk. I've learned a lot, definitely. I feel like y'all were just in my room telling me what I need to do going forward. So I really appreciate you all. We'll obviously be able to reconvene in the WhatsApp group and going forward. This was a great webinar. Thank you for all attending, whether it be live or through the recording. Have a great day.